Hey guys, it's Jeremy here on Metal Music Meltdown, back with another video. What I have for you today, guys, is the next installment of my top 10 videos of each year. If you're new to the channel, what I've been doing in this series is listing my top albums starting back in 1970, where metal all began. The 70s, I just did top 5, so definitely check out those 10 videos in my playlist. And when I got to 1980, I bumped it up to top 10. And we're up to the next decade. This video is cracking into the 90s. With 1990. So definitely list below your favorite album from 1990 and definitely check out my playlist to watch the other videos from all the 70s and the 80s, and definitely feel free to leave comments there as well of some albums you really enjoy from those years. 1990 was surprisingly more difficult than I thought it was going to be. There's so many iconic albums that came out in 1990, but I narrowed it down to my top 10 and put them in an order. Some of them I kind of had to move around a few times, but I kind of finally decided. So before I list my number 1, I'll give some audible mentions, and we'll kind of go from there. So if you enjoyed the video, guys, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this type of content, definitely join the Metal Music Meltdown family. So let's jump right in. I don't say too much about each album, just a couple favorite tracks from each one and kind of go through keep it rolling. So at number 10, I have the Mighty Slayer with Seasons in the Abyss. I like this album a lot. Favorite standout tracks would be War Ensemble for sure, Dead Skin Mask, and probably the title track. Great album, a little bit different sounding album from Slayer, but I really enjoyed it. At number 9, some people might be surprised that this is this low, but Pantera with Cowboys from Hell. Love this album, it's a really good album. I'm not the biggest Pantera fan, that's why it's a little bit lower on my list, but this is an all-time classic. It's this one, Vulgar Display of Power, and Far Beyond Driven are the 3 Pantera albums I really enjoy. But in terms of songs, from this album, I would probably choose definitely the title track. Cemetery Gates is one of my favorite Pantera songs. It's so good. And probably Domination as a third choice. At number 8, I have Testament with Souls of Black. Love Testament, it's my favorite thrash band of all time. In terms of a song, definitely the title track. I love that song, it's insane good. And Love to Hate, and probably Face in the Sky. This album is really underrated in my opinion. I think the production really kills this album in a way. Like, if the production was more beefier and not so thin, I think this would stand up against a lot of their really popular albums. It's definitely underrated in my opinion. Great album, just shitty production. At number 7, I have AC/DC, The Razor's Edge. I love AC/DC, always have put a smile on my face, just really fun to listen to. Hard rockin', just put you in that good mood. Really hype music. This is definitely one of my top 5 AC/DC records of all time. I love Thunderstruck. It's a song I never get sick of. It always sounds good. I love Are You Ready too, the other single. And Money Talks is okay. I'm a little tired of that song. But the third choice I'd probably go with is the title track, The Razor's Edge. Always love that album. I think this is where I might have come in to AC/DC. This might have been the first album I heard from them. Because 1990, I would have been 11. So, yeah, I think this was the first album I heard from AC/DC, and I kind of expanded out from there. So that might be part of the reason I really enjoy this record as well. It's because for nostalgia region, it kind of is where I came into the band. And at number 6, I have Death with Spiritual Healing. Love Death. It's my favorite death metal band of all time. This is their 3rd studio album. Standout tracks, Low Life, Within the Mind, and Altering the Future. Really solid album. These guys never put out a bad album. At number 5, I have Obituaries, 2nd album, entitled Cause of Death. This is my favorite Obituary album of all time. Love the album cover. Actually, this album cover was supposed to be a Sepultura album cover originally, but then they ended up using it for Obituary. Standout tracks would be Circle of the Tyrants, chopped in half, and probably infected. And at number 4, I went with Entombed, Left Hand Path. It's also their debut record. I love this album. It's one of my favorite death metal albums of all time. Definitely my favorite Entombed album. It's just a masterpiece. I listen to this all the time. It's killer. I lost the CD of it though, so I do have to pick up another copy of it. But it's a killer album. Love it, love it. At number 3, I have the second album from Canadian thrashers Annihilator, Never Neverland. This and Alice in Hell are definitely their 2 best albums, but they have a lot of good stuff throughout their catalog. Standout tracks for me, The Fun Palace, Sixes and Sevens, and probably Stonewall. Really solid album all the way through. Jeff Waters with his killer riffs never disappoints. Really solid stuff. At number 2, I have the 12th studio album from the mighty Judas Priest, Gods of Metal, with Painkiller. This is my favorite Judas Priest album of all time. It's so heavy and it just kicks ass. Standout tracks, definitely the title track, Painkiller, one of my favorite Priest songs of all time. And Nightcrawler is pretty good, and I'll probably go with Hell Patrol as my other favorite. And before I give this my number 1, just some quick honorable mentions. Let me just go through the quick list here online to see what stands out. Death Angel with Act 3 was one that barely did make the list. Dio, Lock Up the Wolves came out this year as well. Really solid album. Anthrax had Persistence of Time, decent album. Bathory had Hammerheart. Black Sabbath Tear, I don't really like that album, but it's Black Sabbath, worth mentioning. Cannibal Corpse had Eaten Back to Life. I do really enjoy this Cannibal Corpse album, but there's just so many other, like Caused by Death, Left Hand Path, Spiritual Healing. There's so many other iconic death metal albums. I decided to leave that one off. And let me see. Ex-Hoarder had Slaughter at the Vatican. That was one that barely didn't make my list. That probably would have been number 11. Exodus had Impact is Imminent. That's another one that's really up there. I really love Exodus as well. Forbidden had Twisted into Form. Holy Moses had World Chaos this year. Let me see. Morbid Saint had Spectrum of Death, which is a reissue of their demos. That's a really good album. Stupid album cover, but a really solid album. That one barely did make my list as well. Creator had Coma of Souls, another really great thrash metal album from Germany. Iconic from them as well. Didn't quite make my list. I chose some other albums ahead of it. And Iron Maiden had No Pray for the Dying. It's very surprising to me that Maiden didn't make my list, but it's one of my least favorite Maiden albums, and just the other stuff on my list, I just listen to it more often, and I just like it a little bit better. Let's see if there's anything else really that stands out. Sacrifice had Soldiers of Misfortune, really good Canadian thrash. Razor had Shotgun Justice, love that band as well, really good album. It's another one that didn't quite make my list. Sacred Reich had The American Way. Tons of good stuff this year. Sodom had Better Off Dead, pretty decent album. They never disappoint. Tankard had The Meaning of Life. Violence had Oppressing the Masses. I think that's really it I see for now. I'm sure there's a couple I might have missed, but Danzig 2 was pretty solid as well. But my number 1, guys, it had to be Rust in Peace by Megadeth. It's my favorite Megadeth album of all time. It's definitely the Megadeth album that can stand up against, the rivalry. Metallica's top 4. Holy Wars might be my favorite thrash song of all time. It's just crazy good. It's so heavy and fast. So many changes and transitions, but it's perfect. Hangar 18 is really good as well. Take No Prisoners, Tornado of Souls. Dawn Patrol, like the whole thing is just top to bottom a perfect record. Definitely one of my top 5 favorite thrash records of all time. So it definitely had to be my number 1. So list down below, guys, what your favorite picks from 1990 were. And like I said, definitely check out my other album list from my playlist. And stay tuned for 1991 in the next week or two. And until next time, guys, keep it metal.